Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be interviewing Peter Murphy-Lewis from strategicpete.com. Strategic Pete, thanks so much for joining us.
Excited to be here, Seth.
We are excited to have you. Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started?
Ooh, I'll do the short version. I started as an entrepreneur in 2007 in South America when I was in the middle of my PhD and I was starting to apply to other jobs to get outside of academia. And no one would hire me because I looked like a scholar. So I created my own company.
Well, was that Strategic Pete? Did you start it the way it is now, 17 years?
No, Strategic Pete would be close to my 5th company that I've started. The first one back then was a travel company that kind of made it quick into New York Times. Strategic Pete is kind of my 2.0 version of taking everything I know as an entrepreneur and working as a consultant to help people do what I did before.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that backstory. What were you able to accomplish in the previous companies that fed into Strategic Pete?
I think my craft was around doing less is more, and then also storytelling. So the travel companies that I started in South America, I got really good at explaining to tourists, to visitors, to clients, the secret of South American culture in tours. And I was able to do that through, Google ads and Facebook ads and selling high-end packages, $3,000 to $10,000. And that kind of craft eventually translated over into what I do now, which is help people with storytelling, often positioning a CEO or an executive as kind of the front of their brand. I find that people like to talk to people, not brands. And that's kind of the secret to my success.
Awesome. And I'm sure the longer version about how that came to be could be in a book somewhere if it isn't already. Let's talk a little bit about who's an ideal client for you now.
Right now, it's CEOs who have too much marketing data and don't know how to get a return on investment with that data.
Awesome. Is there a particular company size that you like working with?
2 to 10 million is my current client base. I've worked with larger. I can also work with their teams more as a consultant role. But if you need me for some execution, it's the 2 to 10 million point is kind of my secret spot.
Awesome. And is there a particular industry that you've had good results in?
That is varied. So banking, I've helped charter new banks. I've worked with a bank. I'm on the board of a bank, medium-sized bank. I've worked with 4 zoos in the last 4 years. And I think the most interesting thing about me personally, Seth, is I actually live inside of a zoo. You and I are speaking right now, and I am about 50 yards from the zebras and 10 yards from my house. And then I've worked with healthcare, long-term care, worked with AI. So a little bit all over the gamut. It's if you have too much data, you don't know what to do. I don't really care about your industry.
Okay, you got to go back for a second there. How does one live inside? Is like you hear all the time, you at a country club, you buy a house on a golf course. How exactly? I've never heard of anyone living inside of a zoo. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I moved from South America back to the US in 2019 with my 3-year-old son at the time and my Chilean wife. And in my trip around the United States, I visited a zoo in Kansas. And about a month later, that CEO of the zoo reached out to me and asked me if I would take over his marketing team and turn his marketing into revenue. And I called my wife and I said, honey, I got a job to work at a zoo and they're offering us to live there. And she said, sight unseen, she said, take it. So I called them back and took it. And I have been living in the zoo since. I now work as a strategic consultant for them. So I don't work in the day-to-day or execution, but I do live next to the zebras. And I consider that's great pay.
Okay, so expand on that. I'm sorry, I'm fascinated. So normally when, and obviously the Buffalo Zoo is significantly smaller than the Kansas City Zoo, but I've never seen any homes on the Buffalo Zoo campus. Is this part of an animal habitat, or are you the only person who lives there? Do they literally sell house plots on zoos and the developer built it? Tell me more.
I love how we're going down this path. This is, as I mentioned, the only thing interesting about me. So there are the founders, so it's a couple, plus the head of people, the chief of people. So there are six of us who live inside of the zoo, the founders plus a kind of a chief operations person and me and my family. And it started off as a breeding facility for exotic and endangered animals in the early 1990s. The now CEO, the son of the founder, wrote his MBA thesis on how he could take a breeding zoo and turn it into a private kind of wildlife park and resort in, I want to say they're going on 15 years now. And that turned into a real project. And he did that and he turned it into a very successful wildlife park. It's a very high-end, exclusive resort where people can swim with penguins, let lemurs sit on their lap. Soon you're going to be able to swim with otters. It's a very exclusive resort. So I don't think there's a lot of people with homes in zoos. Now, I must say, one of my clients that I worked with, a zoo in Florida, they did have a home inside their zoo. So when I went and did my onboarding in person to help them out, I lived inside the house inside their zoo. So I've lived inside of 2 zoos in the US. I'm looking for the third, the charm.
That is absolutely awesome. So what are the marketing challenges? You mentioned too much data, don't know what to do with it. How do I know as a business owner, as a CEO, if I have that problem, and how do you help me solve it?
I think the first thing that you have the problem is you are leading your marketing team by metrics that you're getting from either cold emailers or from reports from Google Analytics or reports from Facebook, and you are not leading it with a strategy. So you need to take all of those automated reports that you're getting and not let those control where your focus is, and even more so where your marketing team is focused. The system that I like to use is I like to follow a scorecard, very similar to the book Traction from the EOS system.
Yep,
and I set up
we run on EOS, and Gino's been on my show.
It's awesome. Yeah, I think it's the best. So I set up everyone on that. If they can afford a facilitator, I tell them to get one. If they can't, let's start off with 5 to 15 metrics from a marketing point of view that we need to look at. What is our benchmark? And we only look at those items off track in a specific moment, and we determine who's going to look at them, and we do what we're going to do to get them back on track. Not on any given Tuesday when you get an email from Google saying, hey, this is not indexed. You don't stop your marketing team to go track down where there's a broken link.
You're absolutely right there. You've worked with, as you mentioned, a number of different industries and had some incredible results. Can you walk us through, one of those case studies?
Yeah, I think my favorite, because it's very tangible and it's live right now, is I was recruited and invited to work for a private equity company. It was a turnaround project for the private equity where they were turning around a long-term care software as a service. This was in November 2020. And I started taking over their marketing team, and we had to rebrand within 2 months, and we had to stop churn that was north of 30% within 1 year. And we left the pipeline north of $3 million within the first year. And the way that we did that was we created a podcast in the long-term care space. So I was a podcast host, and that quickly grew into me becoming a keynote speaker at conventions. So I got invited to 15 plus conventions as a keynote speaker for free with a free trade booth, where I brought my sales team. And we started to interview the CEOs of the largest long-term care organizations in the United States and interviewed the president of American Healthcare Association. That turned into 9 months ago, Nebraska Healthcare Association asking me to film a documentary similar to my TV show. I have a TV show in South America. So I took what I did in South America as a storyteller and turned it into a documentary in long-term care. And that's going to air on October 24th in Nebraska. And the American Healthcare Association is probably going to pick that up and make that a national brand part of them right there. So that's what Experience Care did. It was a private equity turnaround Experience Care, which we sold in September of 2023 for a large profit. At that point, I disengaged, and that's still bearing fruits from that podcast play that we did.
That is absolutely incredible. I saw the long-term care podcast on your site and was going to ask what the connection was between a consultant CMO and a long-term care podcast. And that perfect answer to the question and an amazing story. What are some of the biggest issues business? I know you mentioned you're leading your team with data as opposed to, the overarching strategy. What are some of the other big issues that clients are coming to you with that you're helping them solve?
Ooh, for starters, you would be surprised by the number of clients that are in that space of $2 to $10 million in annual revenue that do not have tracking and pixels set up on their website. And they think that they have the pixel set up, but then they're boosting posts. And I have a client right now who a month ago was spending $25,000 a month on Meta ads, and they had their pixel, but they were boosting posts, so they have no idea what was happening with that. That happens a lot more frequent than you'd think. And then I would also say I help clients a lot with their marketing stack, and that's just a bunch of jargon for all of the technology and all of the things, the tools that you have on inside of your business. That marketing stack needs to speak to each other, and I would say that my team and myself is pretty unique at putting those together, allowing you to cut 20 to 40% so you can slow down and focus on less and get more.
That makes a lot of sense. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
I love working with my team. I have about 13 people right now on my team. Every single one of them, except for one, Seth, started off as a marketer doing an internship with me at Strategic Pete. I like to create my own marketers who think outside the box, who may or may have never studied a single marketing class in their life. I look for ambition and critical thinking and problem solving, and I can teach you the marketing behind it.
I love that. With all the success you've achieved, not only for your business, but more importantly for your clients, what's your biggest challenge now?
Biggest challenge now? I think it's going to take me back to Gino Wickman. More people coming in prepared to understand traction. I don't have a problem exactly. Everyone needs to go out and read the book Traction and do at least a C+ attempt to implement it at the beginning. Go find a facilitator, and you'll make everybody else's job. You'll make your chief operations officer job easier, my marketing job easier, sales job easier. My challenge is getting people to understand they need a system to approach problems.
That's awesome. What do you like best about living in a zoo?
My 7-year-old and I and my wife, we don't have neighbors within 100 yards of us, except for 4-legged hairy mammals that walk around and make weird noises. And I spend a lot of time in my hammock outside of my house. Yesterday, I spent an hour and a half in a hammock with one of my best friends and my son, and just listened to the animals as the sun went down.
That sounds absolutely amazing. For our folks watching and listening who want to learn more, where is the best place for us to send them?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest place. I accept every connection, even if you're going to spam me full of crappy DMs, I will accept that, and then I'll just block you afterwards. Go find me. I think I'm the only Peter Murphy Lewis on LinkedIn. And then my website is Strategic Pete, strategicpete.com. I'm happy to give you a free audit if that's anything that I'm doing sounds like it would help you. Thanks so much.
Awesome. This has been Seth Greene for Sharkpreneur with Peter Murphy Lewis from Strategic Pete. Pete, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Seth.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.